Number 8. Sore losers shoot up pool hall. After losing 2 consecutive games at a pool hall in Sinop City, Brazil in February of 2023, a pair of grown men childishly pulled weapons on a group of people who were laughing at them. The sore losers lined their victims up against a wall at gunpoint and opened fire, killing 7 people at point-blank range. Horrifying footage of the massacre showed helpless victims falling to the floor one by one, while others ran for their lives. Before fleeing the scene, the shooter stole a woman's purse and took back the 20,000 reais or $4,000 they had lost during the games. Police Lieutenant Romaninho dos Santos Silva told the press that some of the victims weren't even involved in the game. In other words, they were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they paid for it with their lives. Authorities identified the gunman as 27-year-old Ezequias Souza Ribeiro and 30-year-old Edgar Ricardo de Oliveira, who both had violent criminal histories. Ribeiro was killed 2 days after the massacre in a shootout with military police, and Oliveira surrendered the following morning. Some might say that the shooters were violent criminals who took poor sportsmanship to a new low. Others blame the country's pro-gun policies, which were introduced in recent years by former President Jair Bolsonaro. While the senseless bloodbath has opened up a can of worms among politicians regarding gun control and violent crime, everyone seems to at least agree that Oliveira is exactly where he belongs, and that he deserves to never see freedom again. Number 7. Deadly drill rap. A rap battle between 2 teenagers from London took a horrifying turn in 2022 when diss tracks escalated to deadly violence. In a drill rap posted to YouTube, high schooler Tyler Hurley and his friends mocked rival rapper Carlton Tanua and his entourage. Infuriated by the disrespect, Tanua armed himself with a zombie knife and kept an eye out for Hurley. He spotted the young man waiting at a bus station and followed him onto the bus. Tanua chased Hurley into the back of the vehicle and stabbed him to death in broad daylight. A brave witness followed Tanua as he fled the scene and tipped police off to the suspect's location. Officers took him into custody less than 20 minutes later. Social media posts from earlier that day made it clear that Tanua was out for blood. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 26 years. Number 6. Doppelganger meets danger. People were eager to get out of the house when Britain relaxed its COVID restrictions in 2021, but some apparently forgot how to act in public during life in lockdown. 35-year-old Danny Humble and his partner Adele Stubbs were walking home from a pub in Cramlington, Northumberland, when a group of 5 teens approached and made a joke about how he resembled British TV host Ant McPartland. Humble was apparently unamused by the comment and tried to punch one of the teens. Just seconds later, the young men surrounded Humble beneath an underpass and threw him to the ground. They beat, kicked, and stomped on him while Adele looked on helplessly and screamed at the gang to stop. By the time the attack finally ended, Humble was suffering from a catastrophic head injury that he ultimately died from. 18-year-old Alistair Dixon was convicted of murder for stomping on Humble's head and causing the injury that killed him. He was sentenced to life with a minimum of 12 years. His 4 accomplices were found guilty of manslaughter and were each sentenced to 6.5 years with a requirement to serve at least 2/3 of their time behind bars. Number 5. Firefighter gets fired. As a member of the Miami-Dade Police Department's Robbery Intervention Detail, 29-year-old Cesar Echeverry regularly worked in high-crime areas and encountered some of the area's most dangerous criminals. While patrolling in Dania Beach one day in 2022, the squad spotted a car that had been involved in a robbery earlier that day. The driver, Jeremy Horton, tried to drive away but crashed into several patrol cars and a civilian vehicle. He then attempted to flee on foot as officers yelled at him to stop. Gunfire broke out and both Horton and Echeverry were shot. Horton died instantly, and Echeverry clung to life as he was rushed to the hospital with a bullet wound to the head. He died from his injuries 2 days later, leaving the law enforcement community devastated. While Echeverry's colleagues and loved ones mourned his death, Miami firefighter Kevin Newcomb treated the tragedy as an opportunity to vent his woke political views. In a WhatsApp group chat, he mocked Echeverry's death, writing, "Who cares? Another dead cop probably against gun control." Newcomb devolved into a diatribe about how he thinks the police only exist to help the government exercise its monopoly on violence. He went on to say, they want the whole world to stop when one of theirs goes down. The disgruntled firefighter described cops as idiots who were all too stupid to wear masks or get vaccinated, and signed off with the rant, "F the police." After finding out about the disparaging message, Miami Fire Chief Joseph Zaralban relieved Newcomb of duty with plans to terminate him permanently pending the outcome of an investigation. He made it clear to the public that Newcomb's words did not reflect the views of the fire department and mentioned how firefighters and police are supposed to look out for one another as public safety professionals. Newcomb issued a lengthy apology to the public and to Echeverry's friends, family, colleagues, and other loved ones. But the damage was done, and in addition to harming others with his intensive words, Newcomb's self-sabotaging behavior cost him his career. After considering the beliefs he expressed, Chief Zaralban concluded that it was impossible for this individual to carry out his duties as a first responder in the city of Miami. Number 4. Drunk homophobes target the wrong victim. During a night out drinking in Swansea, Wales in 2009, 19-year-old Dean Jonathan Gardner and 22-year-old Jason Andrew Fender decided to entertain themselves by starting problems with people. By that point in the evening, the men were heavily intoxicated. They should have just called it a night and went home. Instead, they exited the nightclub they were partying at and joined in a huge brawl that was going on in the street. Included among the other participants was someone in a Spider-Man outfit. After getting their first aggressive fix, Gardner and Fender began walking down the street looking for another fight. Surveillance footage captured Gardner harassing two men dressed in drag as they walked past on the sidewalk. Gardner tried to throw a punch, but the men dodged it and swiftly took him and Fender to the ground. In the video, Gardner could be seen rising unsteadily to his feet before stumbling and falling back onto the ground. The men in drag calmly and coolly walked away as some nearby police officers came over and took Gardner and Fender into custody. They were charged with intimidating behavior or worse. During their court proceedings, it was revealed that the victims were cage fighters. Defense attorney Mark Davies claimed that neither of the defendants went out looking for a fight that night, but they went way overboard with the booze, had drank 10 pints of cider, and an unknown number of cocktails before the altercation. As Davies put it, "You know it cannot have been a good night when you get into a fight with Spider-Man and two cross-dressing men." Gardner and Fender both pleaded guilty. They were hit with 4-month community orders which came with a 7 p.m. curfew and required each of them to wear an electronic ankle monitor. Number 3, trolling couple gets called out. In 2012, an internet troll by the handle Nimrod Severn began posting sickeningly intensive comments on pages and posts dedicated to people who had passed away. The keyboard warrior had a penchant for taunting the grieving families and friends of murder victims. He posted comments that aren't worth repeating verbatim, but wished horrific things on the dead. When people stood up to the anonymous smack talker, he justified his behavior by saying that social media was an open forum. Nimrod Severn may have thought that nobody would ever figure out his real identity and call him out on his appalling behavior, but the BBC decided to track him down, and their investigation led them to a British man named Darren Burton. When confronted by journalists, Burton didn't deny that he wrote cruel statements about people who died tragically. He also expressed no remorse for doing so, proving that he was just as cold and sociopathic in real life as he was when he hid behind a computer screen. In a nauseating twist, journalists also discovered evidence suggesting that Burton's girlfriend, Christy Chapman, also trolled strangers, and in a very similar fashion. Unlike Burton, she put out a seemingly sweet and almost meek real-life persona in contrast to the personality of her alleged online alter ego, Percy. Chapman denied being Percy, but few were convinced by her claims of innocence, especially considering who her boyfriend was. The couple were never charged with any crimes, but the court of public opinion held the couple plenty accountable for their actions. Now that their identities were out there, they knew that the world was watching, and they could no longer keep their online activities cleanly separated from their day-to-day lives. Number 2. Corrections officer crosses a line. Turhan Knight was just 4 years into his career as a corrections officer in Louisville, Kentucky, when he was fired over a parody video he made at the Kentucky State Fair in 2022. In the mock recruitment ad, Knight could be seen walking past a row of patrol vehicles and sarcastically stated that officers were trying to repair broken relationships within the community. He then said, "Never mind what happened to Breonna Taylor," referencing the shooting death of the young African-American woman at the hands of police during a botched raid in 2020. Knight called Taylor the B-word and went on to encourage his imaginary audience to join the local police department, saying, "Do you want to kill people and be able to get off for it?" As you've probably already guessed, it wasn't long before the video went viral online, and many people were less than entertained by Knight's attempt at humor. He was fired from his corrections job immediately after officials learned about the distasteful clip. In a statement, Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher condemned Knight's actions, saying that he brought great shame upon the city's corrections department and to the local government in general. Shortly after the footage made headlines, Knight told the Courier-Journal that he was planning to leave his job soon anyway, and that he was trying to hire a lawyer to represent him. He also said that he made the video as a joke, and that he made it based on his feelings about how some officers handled past situations. Knight apologized for his actions and said that he didn't mean to hurt Breonna Taylor's family. Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, said that she was disgusted by the clip, which she felt made a mockery of her daughter's death. She also cited Knight's behavior as an example of law enforcement yet again showing disregard for the incident that led to Breonna's untimely death. And at number 1, Insensitive Irishmen embarrassed themselves. 27-year-old Irish language teacher Michaela McCavery married her soulmate, John McCavery, in 2011. The couple took off from Northern Ireland to Mauritius for their honeymoon, where they expected to kick off their new life together with a relaxing vacation in paradise. But their newly wedded bliss was cut short just 2 days into the trip when Michaela was strangled to death in their hotel room. Investigators theorized that she walked in on a robbery in progress and was murdered so she couldn't report the crime to police. They arrested 2 hotel workers the very next day. The defendants maintained their innocence all throughout their trials and were ultimately acquitted of the charges. Michaela's murder remains unsolved to this day. 11 years later, in 2022, a video surfaced online of a group of Irish men mocking the tragedy. They chanted and sang about the murder while banging on a table in a room filled with paintings and flags representing various Protestant and Loyalist political and religious organizations. There were beer cans all over the place, and the men were clearly drunk. While the politics of Ireland and Northern Ireland are complicated to say the least, the footage drew disapproval across the board and was condemned by members of all political factions and loyalties. 2 of the men seen in the video, John Bell and Andrew McDade, issued an apology for their behavior after the clip went viral on social media. They said that their behavior was fueled by alcohol, but that they took responsibility for their wrongdoings, and they apologized to both Michaela's loved ones and society in general. Bell and McDade also made it clear that their conduct did not represent any political organization or community, and that their abhorrent behavior reflected their poor judgment and nobody else's. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be caught doing an insulting impression of a nice but annoying coworker who thought you were their friend, or find out that you had made a friend cry with an insensitive comment about their appearance that you didn't think would offend them and meant as a joke? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. See you next time.